צופים יקרים, שמי טל אורנן ואני מתכבד לארח כאן את פרנסיסקו גיל ווייט, ה-CEO של ארגון שנקרא Management of Reality, ניהול המציאות. Francisco, nice to see you here. We've talked before. I'm honored. And just before we start, אתם מוזמנים להצטרף אלינו על ידי לחיצה על הקישור מתחת לנגן, לתמוך בערוץ, בו אתם מקבלים ערוצים ומרואיינים לא סטנדרטיים, שאתם לא מקבלים בערוצים אחרים. And let's start immediately. Actually, we want to talk about President Trump, his policies, and whether he's for Israel or against Israel when we talked about his policies towards the Middle East and maybe even towards Europe as well, Russia or Ukraine or whatever. So where do we start with? Where is our starting point?
Well, I think our starting point, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, Tal. It's always a pleasure to be with Arutz Tov. I think perhaps there is no necessary place to start. We can just think about the different borders of Israel. Maybe that's the best method. And to consider Trump's policies in each of Israel's borders. So the question is there any border of Israel where Trump's policies may be said to be genuinely directed towards protecting the security of the Jewish state? That's the question. So if I go around Israel's borders really quick, I think I can make the case that a strong case that Trump has been weakening the security of the Israeli state. So think about Lebanon, for instance. In Lebanon, Trump insisted on a ceasefire when Israel was defeating Hezbollah. So Israel had already killed Nasrallah and the leaders of Hezbollah in the bunker, which was supposed to be impregnable. And with the beeper and walkie-talkie operation, they managed to take out quite a few Hezbollah operatives. And then they were advancing over the terrain in Lebanon, quickly defeating Hezbollah. And that's when Trump insisted that they stop. And instead of letting Israel liberate Lebanon, Trump stopped the Israelis, forced them, well, I shouldn't say forced them because the Israelis could have refused, Netanyahu could have refused, but Trump insisted in Israel signing a ceasefire agreement with Lebanon, which Netanyahu agreed to do. And the agreement was completely against Israel's interests. So the agreement was on the Lebanese side, all they had to do was produce a paper with an alleged plan to disarm Hezbollah. And that's all they had to do. And then Tom Barak, the US negotiator that Trump sent to Lebanon, turned around and said to Israel, well, look, Lebanon has complied. Now it's your turn. Get out of Lebanon. So Lebanon had to produce a piece of paper that means nothing, and Israel had to get out of Lebanon and abandon its military advantage and also the opportunity to completely defeat Hezbollah and liberate Lebanon, which would have eliminated the threat to Israel from Lebanon and also would have been a great benefit to all of the Lebanese. No,
but I must ask you a question from an Israeli point of view, of a person who I've never been fighting in Lebanon, but my friends, same age, been in 82 and 83 and later, and we've been there 18 years. And is it not Israel's as well post-trauma of those 18 years that led to the fact, a part of the IDF ability to have enough forces in Lebanon, not to occupy, let's say, all the area until the Litani River, just because we needed those forces somewhere else, and our army is not as big as it used to be, for example, in the 70s. And while we have this agreement, we keep on attacking them on a daily basis, preventing actions of re-establishing Hezbollah ability to attack Israel.
Well, that approach is kind of I think it's been called the mowing the lawn approach by other commentators. In other words, you keep degrading Hezbollah, Hezbollah keeps coming back, and it never goes away, and sometimes it grows strong enough to really inflict serious damage, and it becomes a long-term threat because the danger to Israel is always of a joint attack. If a joint attack is big enough, Israel could be destroyed. This is something that was concluded in a 1967 Pentagon study. It was a secret study. It was not done for Israel's benefit. Right after the 1967 war, the Pentagon concluded in a study that without Judea, Samaria, the Golan, and a couple of other pieces of territory, Israel cannot survive in the long term. So what Israel needs for long-term security is not to keep degrading its enemies slowly and gradually, or let us say recurrently. What Israel needs is to completely defeat its enemies. That's what produces security. And Israel, look, I have an article from the experts at West Point who wrote that Hezbollah's defeat was really surprising and quick when Israel was advancing over Lebanon. I mean, so you could say, you know, Israel doesn't have as many soldiers as it did in the 1970s. Okay, fine. But the fact on the ground, as Israel was advancing in Lebanon, is that Hezbollah was being easily defeated. This is what the experts at West Point were amazed by. So if Hezbollah was being easily defeated, why not just keep going? It wasn't Israel that stopped for lack of soldiers. Israel stopped because Trump insisted on Israel stopping. So that's what happened.
Let me make it a bit hard, just for the sake of making this conversation interesting, though I might agree with you. Advancing in Lebanon, well, we're still in Lebanon. There are 5 points where actually Israel's post. I mean, Israel army is in the south of Lebanon, very close to the border, but in quite higher elevations that kind of protect Israel settlements in the north of Israel. We are on the top of the Hermon mountain, in the Syrian top of the mountain, which we have never been before. We have forces inside Syria, not very deep, but deeper than the lines of the agreement of 1974. We are controlling half of Gaza. I mean, we are certainly in different lines than we used to be. Trump himself recognized the Golan Heights as part of Israel, so it's not anymore kind of a disputed land. It's recognized. It's maybe disputed for Giuliani, but not for us. And there are settlements there, and the main advantage there is that there are no foreign, I would say, occupied people there, except the Jews that are becoming more and more pro-Israelis these days because of Assad fall in Syria. They're not worried anymore about their families because those Sunnis controlling Syria are basically their enemies too. We see what's happening in Sweda, in the Druze part of South Syria. So aren't we, at the end of the day, in a better strategic position?
Yes, Israel is in a slightly better strategic position than it was recently, but that we are changing the conversation now, because the question was whether Trump is pro-Israel or not. Israel's strategic position could have improved a little bit, and Trump could be an anti-Israel president all at the same time. The question is not, at least the question I began with, is not whether Israel has improved a little bit its strategic position, but whether that is thanks to Trump or in spite of Trump. So okay. I think in Lebanon...
But then again, we had Biden before, which, you know, we had an embargo of weaponry with him. Kamala Harris didn't want us to go into Rafah, which was going there and controlling all the Philadelphia corridor was essential to fighting Hamas and prevent you know, smuggling of weapons and whatever. So let me try to take it to another point. With all that IMEC settlement that Trump is thriving for, meaning, you know, the path of communication and energy and business from India all the way to Europe, through Israel, through the Middle East, isn't it something that basically gives advantage to Israel as a junction in the Middle East?
Well, I think in theory, yes. In principle, yes. But when you look at Trump's policies, it's very difficult to see a pro-Israel pattern. I don't see it. So Trump stopped the Israelis in Lebanon when they were winning. They were winning against a terrorist organization that has no right to exist. Because Hezbollah has no right to exist. It's an organization created to destroy the Israeli state in genocide. So why would Trump protect them? Hezbollah for years now has been controlling Lebanon. They are effectively the government of Lebanon. Why would Trump protect that? And after Trump forced an agreement with a ceasefire agreement with Lebanon, he resumed sending weapons to the Lebanese armed forces. But those weapons are for Hezbollah, because Hezbollah has governed the state of Lebanon. They have controlled the Lebanese government for a while now. They have 2/3 of the portfolios in the government, which means they have control of the Supreme Defense Council, which controls the Lebanese armed forces. And therefore, all of the armament that Trump is sending to the Lebanese army, which is supposedly for disarming Hezbollah, which never happens, those weapons are really not for disarming Hezbollah. They are arming Hezbollah. So that is Trump's policy in Lebanon. He has chosen to protect a terrorist organization whose mission is the genocide of the Israeli Jews. And in Syria, he did the same thing. In Syria, when Assad surprisingly fell in a matter of days, al-Jolani, who's no great military leader, he was trapped in Idlib, right? He couldn't get out of Idlib. The only reason he survived there was because of Turkish support. But Assad suddenly falls when Hezbollah moves its position, some of its positions into Lebanon, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard also moved some of its positions into Lebanon. And anyway, they moved positions that remained in Syria. They moved them around because they were getting bombarded by Israel. In that moment, Jolani saw a direct line to Damascus, and that's the only reason he could get to Damascus. And in that chaos, Israel was advancing from the south with support from the Druze population, and they could have continued to advance all the way to the northeast and join with the Rojava Kurds in the north, who are not only democratic, they're libertarian, they emancipated Kurdish women, they protect all the minorities, they defeated ISIS, they're great allies for the Israeli Jews. If Israel had just continued moving north in Syria in that chaos, they would have easily liberated Syria. Instead, Trump insisted that they stop and that they recognize Jolani's government, which Trump went to Riyadh to shake Jolani's hand and de facto give him recognition. And now Trump has removed the sanctions on Syria now that Jolani is governing Syria. Look, al-Jolani is ISIS. He is the al-Nusra Front, which was created by ISIS. The only reason he ever fought ISIS was because he didn't want to be al-Baghdadi's, subordinate, but they never had any ideological differences. So that's ISIS. They want to destroy Israel too. They want to destroy it in genocide. And Trump has now insisted that Israel recognize them as the legitimate government of Syria. That's not a pro-Israeli policy. And if we keep going around, we see the same pattern. He is now giving armament to Saudi Arabia that is going to destroy the military superiority of the Israelis vis-a-vis Saudi Arabia, especially if he allows them to develop nuclear weapons, which seems to be the direction they're going. Keep going around. Think about Iran, right? The policy towards Iran is incredible. In the 12-day war, Israel was hitting Iran with impunity. They had no air defenses. The Iranian regime was hours away, maybe, from collapsing. The Ayatollahs were hours away, perhaps, from just losing everything. And that's when Trump came in, dropped a couple of bombs so that he could be a co-belligerent. And then, as a co-belligerent, he imposed the ceasefire on Israel. That ceasefire didn't hurt the Iranians, it saved the Iranians. What it did is it destroyed Israel's ability to take the Ayatollahs off the map as dangerous enemies of Israel. Why is Trump doing that if he's pro-Israel? And then you have Qatar. Look, Qatar is almost the most dramatic chess piece on the board because
you
Qatar.
You made Turkey as well.
Yes, Turkey, exactly, because Turkey is the whatchamacallit, the mafioso godfather of ISIS in Syria, right?
Yeah.
And Trump has a very good relationship with Turkey, and he wants to arm the Turks. He wants to give them the U.S. Jet fighters that they've always wanted. And meanwhile, Turkey is the Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has been saying that he wants to destroy Israel. He's been saying it out loud, right? And now he controls Syria. So now the Iran, East-West axis may have been weakened, but what has been strengthened is the North-South axis with Turkey, which is much more dangerous, and that's Trump's doing.
Well,
right.
Let me ask you a question regarding that, because look, there is always this American interest, and as far as I'm analyzing it, I feel that everything is supposed to be analyzed through American relationship with China. So what interests Trump is whether China is able to create its corridor through Russia to Europe, to Panama, through the North Pole and whatever. And all of us here, with all our different interests, since we are a 10 million population country, and a pretty small one, is somehow to manage our interest within the American interest in order to defend ourselves, of course, and to kind of manage ourselves in this crazy Middle East. So, for example, if we talked about Turkey, so just today there is a publication of a $3 billion deal between Israel and Greece, where we are supplying them with missiles and all kinds of weapon systems to defend the Greek islands against the Turks, who are becoming more and more aggressive. And there is this old story about us building a gas pipe or an oil pipe from us to Cyprus, to Greece, to Italy, because Israel is not supplying Europe with a lot of its gas, maybe only 2 or 3%, but it's considered to be a very stable country which you can count on, as opposed to the Kurds who've been just bombed 2 days ago by Iranian rockets on their fields. So we have to somehow manage that, and we'd better manage it with an administration led by Trump and his Republican Hexet and Rubio are pretty much supportive of Israel, or at least saying that, rather than Biden's and his radical left Democratic Party.
Well, I think we are always in danger of taking too seriously the things that people say. And I think that the things that people say are useless. We need to pay attention at the things that people do. You are correct that let us say, the public rhetoric of the Biden administration was not as pro-Israeli as the public rhetoric of the Trump administration. This is true, but it is also meaningless. What matters is what the policies are on the ground. And the policies on the ground of the Trump administration, regardless of how many nice words they say in favor of Israel, has been disastrous for Israeli security. I was about to tell you about Qatar, which is almost the most telling example, because Qatar is the state that attacked Israel on October 7th. And that's the most, why? Because they are the mafioso godfather of Hamas, right?
Of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right, Qatar is the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatar has been financing much of the infrastructure that Hamas has built in Gaza to attack the Israelis. So, and they have been protecting the Hamas leaders in Qatar. So Qatar is the state that attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023, which is the biggest terrorist attack since the Holocaust. Okay, now, Qatar happens to be the biggest ally of the United States in the entire region. And that's because they have the U.S. has its biggest most important military base there, the Al Udeid base, which is the headquarters for CENTCOM, whose area of responsibility, Central Command, is North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. It's very important. So that's the big ally of the United States. It's not Israel. And when Israel tried to do something against Hamas in Qatar, Trump's reaction was violent offense. And he had Netanyahu apologize to the Emir of Qatar, to the Al Thani Emir of Qatar, and then he declared that Qatar would have NATO-level protection from the United States. So Qatar is the state that the United States really cares about, and it protects Qatar from Israel after Qatar launched the worst terrorist attack against Israelis since World War II. That's so what Trump is doing.
Where do you put that declaration of outlawing the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States, which we heard about a few days ago?
Well, that's obviously just a piece of theater. Okay. If you're really going to attack the Muslim Brotherhood, you need to take Qatar off the map. And from the Al Udeid base that the United States has inside Qatar, within an hour, the U.S. could take control of Qatar. So if the U.S. was really an ally of Israel, after October 7th, Qatar would have disappeared. And it would have been almost zero cost to the United States. Or the United States could just keep its mouth shut, and it could allow Israel to attack Qatar. But it does none of that. It protects Qatar from the Israelis.
But doesn't it have, well, you're leading me to two different questions. First of all, the Israeli attack, which we all suspected missed on purpose, some of us suspected that, didn't lead to that agreement that released, except two, all of the hostages. There were still two left. We shouldn't forget them, of course. Or another question, do we, well, I kind of forgot it, so let's just...
That's okay, I can answer the first question. Yeah. So the entire concern with the hostages and the various policies to get the hostages back is a form of cooperation with the strategy of the jihadi terrorists. They want negotiations to release hostages. That's their entire strategy. Therefore, the different policies that have been put in motion to collaborate with the hostage negotiations, those are all anti-Israeli policies. This should have been clear after Gilad Shalit if it hadn't been clear before. It should have been clear from the beginning because it's logically obvious. Any negotiation with terrorists to release hostages, all it does is give the terrorists a tremendous incentive to take more hostages. The Gilad Shalit negotiation is a very clear example of this because in exchange for one Israeli soldier, 1,000 terrorists were released from Israeli jails, and those terrorists included Yahya Sinwar and other people who were key to the planning and the execution of the October 7th attacks. So it is obvious that every time you negotiate with terrorists for the release of hostages, what you get is more dead Israeli civilians and larger numbers of hostages. In exchange for Gilad Shalit, Israel turned in 1,200 dead Israeli civilians and 250 new hostages. That's the real arithmetic. So all of this stuff to get hostages released is just another attack on Israel because it's telling the jihadi terrorists, go ahead and take more hostages. So this is endangering the security not only of Israeli civilians, but of Jewish civilians in the diaspora. It is a disastrous policy for the entire Jewish nation. And this is exactly what Trump has been pushing for.
But one might say, if you're looking at the situation in this Rafah pocket, where for the last few weeks, it's been said that there is going to be a settlement of them released, and instead of that, they've been told surrender or die, and they are dying by the dozens. I mean, the IDF is dealing with them. They don't let them run away. They don't let them run away. They bomb the tunnels. I'm talking about the Rafah pocket where there were like 200 Hamas terrorists trapped in the tunnels, and the IDF slowly but surely dealing with them without losing even one soldier, doing it very safely. And they're trying to get out because they have no food anymore, no water. Most of them are being killed. Some of them surrendered. And though the speaker of Hamas said there is no place for surrender, we pretty much saw how they do.
Okay, but this is a different topic. This is the terrorists that are trapped in the tunnels. I was talking about negotiations to release Jewish hostages.
Yeah, I understand. I certainly understand.
Two different topics. I am very glad that those terrorists trapped in the tunnels are not escaping with their lives.
I'm very happy. The question I wanted to ask you. Isn't all that Trump policy has to do with the amazing growing debt of America, which doesn't stop growing, though he's trying very hard to? All these deals he's trying to do with Qatar or with Saudi Arabia, getting $1 billion here and $1 billion or $1 trillion there, to get some or change the relationships with China in order to reduce that American debt. And that American debt, everybody's that watching it knows it still keeps growing. And knowing America, and I've been flying a lot to America over the last 40 years, you can see it in the infrastructure. You can see that this empire is basically, let's say, I would say going down.
Well, so I want to make explicit the implicit question in your explicit question. So let me make it very explicit. What you're really asking is, maybe the United States is not anti-Semitic. Maybe Trump is not anti-Semitic. He just needs money. This is the question you're asking.
Which and is my answer for his relationships with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and whatever.
Right, exactly. So his policies are anti-Israel, but it's not because he's anti-Semitic. It's because he needs the money of the jihadis, right? Well, let's say that's true. Let's say he's not anti-Semitic. Fundamentally, he just cares more about money than he cares about the survival of the Jewish nation. Okay, well, if that's the motivator for Trump, he is anti-Israel. He is anti-Israel because he needs money, but he is anti-Israel. So the policies are still designed to destroy the Jewish state because they are policies that make the jihadis happy. And the jihadis want to kill every last living Jew. So if Trump is doing,
what would you expect Netanyahu to do in this situation?
Netanyahu should tell Trump to go take a hike. When Trump tells Netanyahu that he should surrender his victory in Lebanon to Hezbollah, he should say, no, I'm going to liberate Lebanon. When Trump says stop in Syria, Netanyahu should say, no, I'm going to liberate Syria. I'm going to eliminate the threats to the security of the Jewish population, of the Jewish state. Because that's
do you think that realistically we have
Netanyahu's responsibility is to protect the security of the Jews in the Jewish state.
But do you think that realistically we can do whatever we want? For example, the talk in Israel now is that once the Pope is leaving Lebanon this afternoon or maybe tomorrow morning, there is going to be an attack over Lebanon, a serious attack over Lebanon, exactly what we're supposed to do in order to eliminate Hezbollah's ability to get back to the business.
No. You're not supposed to reduce Hezbollah's ability to attack you. You're supposed to destroy Hezbollah. The policy in World War II should never have been to degrade the Nazis so that the Nazis are a little bit weaker than they were the day before. No, you have to destroy the Nazis because the Nazis wanted to destroy all of us. So what do you have to do with Hezbollah, with Hamas, with PLO Fatah in Judea and Samaria, with the Egyptians in Sinai? You have to destroy them all because the goal of those people is to destroy the Jewish state in genocide. And they have no right to do that. There is no right to destroy another state in genocide. Therefore, any organization or state that has that as a goal, they have to be destroyed. And that is what a true Jewish patriot, which Netanyahu obviously is not, would be doing. Okay? A true Jewish patriot would be explaining to the world and to the Jews, listen, the Trump administration is trying to make me lose a war that I'm winning against forces that want to exterminate my people. Therefore, I will not obey because I am not a servant or a slave of Trump. I am the leader of the Jewish nation. And as a leader of the Jewish nation, my obligation, my responsibility is to protect the Jews in the Jewish nation, in the Jewish state, from extermination, because that is the reason that the Jewish state was created. It was to protect the Jews from extermination. So what is, for example, what is PLO Fatah doing in Judea and Samaria? PLO Fatah, Al-Fatah was created by Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was one of the top exterminators of the European Jews in the Nazi final solution. That's the guy who created what we call the Palestinian Authority. What are they doing inside the Jewish state? And if Trump is an ally of Israel, why isn't he supporting a total destruction of PLO Fatah in the disputed territories? Because we know that the PLO, what we call the Palestinian Authority, they have what is called a pay-for-slay program, where they're spending gigantic sums of money paying any Arab Palestinian who kills the Jew. Those people have no right to exist. People who pay terrorists to kill Jews have zero right to exist, and they have negative right to exist inside the Jewish state. What are they doing there? What are they doing there? Why isn't Netanyahu expelling or killing all of PLO Fatah?
Francisco Gil-Wright, we couldn't agree more. Thank you very much for giving me this interview. Thank you very, very much. And we'll see you again, I suppose. We'll keep on talking about those issues. ולכם הצופים, אני הייתי טל אורנן, אני ממליץ לכם ללחוץ על הלינק מתחת לנגן אם אתם רוצים לראות עוד רעיונות כאלה שמדברים על הדברים שכואבים לנו ביותר. להתראות.